man from Evansville makes history during the 1920s and 30s as a race car driver. We're driving full speed into the life and career of Charlie Wiggins. News 8 Randall Newsom has his story in this month's Finding Indiana.
Uncle Charlie, he would always heard about the Indianapolis 500 Speedway. And he was determined as a young kid that he was going to come up here and he was going to race in that race. But as he got older, he found out that that might not be as easy to achieve as he thought it would be.
Uncle Charlie, also known as Charlie Wiggins, but he goes by another name, the Negro Speed King. Born in 1897 in a segregated part of Evansville called Baptist Town. As the oldest of 4 siblings, Charlie lost both his parents at a young age. After his dad died, he got a job as a chief mechanic and later moved his family to Indianapolis. That's where he began a new project, building his own race car, the Wiggins Special.
He made perfection out of car parts.
He wanted to give that a try because that was his dream. And, you know, he put this car together.
Wiggins wanted to race it at the Indy 500, but in 1920, his Indy 500 application was rejected. At the time, the Speedway did not allow black drivers or mechanics in the race.
The KKK people, they got wind of all this because he wasn't being quiet about this. And they started doing little tricks and things to discourage him. But all they did was make him more determined than ever that he was going to race at the Motor Speedway.
His chance to race would come nearly 4 years later in 1924. A group of businessmen created the Color Speedway Association and held their own race.
He found out about the Golden Glory Sweepstakes, and which they held their races at the fairgrounds. And it was for black people, you know, specifically because they weren't allowed to be at the 500.
Wiggins entered as a driver in 1925, took home his first victory a year later, and then a hot streak, winning 3 years in a row, dominating the early 30s. The wins landed him a job as a mechanic on Bill Cummings' 1934 Indy 500 car, but Wiggins had to dress as a janitor to get into the track. Cummings won the race that year and later gave credit to Wiggins, but tragedy struck 2 years later on a dirt track.
One of the other cars, I think, got stalled. The cars were coming and there was just this huge crash. Uncle Charlie crashed his car. He was in the car partially as it was burning, and someone pulled him the rest of the way out of the car.
Wiggins survived, but lost his leg and his right eye. No stranger to bumps in the road, though, the Speed King made his own prosthetic leg out of wood and continued to work as a mechanic for the remainder of his life. Wiggins died in 1979. He was 82. In 2002, Todd Gould published a book, For Gold and Glory, about the racing champion. And now, Ed Wellburn, who became the first black vice president of global design at General Motors, is bringing the Charlie Wiggins story to the big screen.
For years, I kept saying someone needs to make a feature movie. I hired a team of veteran movie industry writers and producers and bought the rights to the story in Todd Gould's book and hired him as an advisor. And we're in the midst of developing a feature movie.
Adding to the honors of this legend here in Indianapolis on West 29th and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Street. And Evansville Mayor Lloyd Winnicky proclaimed June 23rd as Charlie Wiggins Day. Now and forever, he is Indiana's Negro Speed King.
And that was Randall Newsom.